C Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, comedy on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And some people might consider this insignificant, but one of the most maddening things in the last few months is knowing that I interviewed my next guest a couple years ago and had a transcendent interview, actually to the point where I transcribed some of the interview. But unfortunately, I didn't upload it to my website at the time, and then it disappeared into some kind of vortex. As a result, I no longer had access to that audio, precious audio. And so I was determined to get back and reach out to him in order to be able to create again on a new template, spontaneous improvisation. A guy who has massive chops, found himself in a lot of different kind of folk rock settings, very simplistic, but make no mistake, the guy could stretch out and play all kinds of different melodic improvisation. Jeffrey Labus, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. Nice to be with you.
Hey, can you talk a little bit about the Unicorn Cafe? I mean, was it possible that Wavy Gravy was in there doing poetry? I mean, can you talk about that place?
It was kind of a wide open nightclub in the early days of a lot of people. I remember that. I think Cheech and Chong appeared there.
Yes.
And they were pretty funny.
Well, wait, hold on, though. Tommy Chong was a musician, though. He had his own band for a while.
Yeah, but the two of them were doing a comedy routine.
Wow,
so
wow.
I don't know about that. By the time I got to see them, I'm talking about the spring of 1967. We're going back a few years.
Yeah, absolutely.
The people in the Apple Pie, what became the Apple Pie Motherhood Band that I joined up with that summer, they were appearing there as the Sacred Mushroom at the time. And of course, everyone was complaining about the owner. I still remember his name, George Papadopoulos.
Wow.
One of those wonderful Greek names. But he ran a nice club, and they were trying to keep up with what was going on the West Coast at the time.
Would you say that, like, there were, I mean, I'm not sure which side of the Charles River it was on, but I mean, on the other side you had Club 47, which was more of a folk club, but yet Chuck Israels was playing with Joan Baez. Can you talk about some of the early jazzers that you actually were able to see perform live at that time?
That's an interesting discussion. Folk rock was kind of the predominant thing that was happening, especially in the Boston scene in those days. And certainly Club 47 played a major role there. I think that there was a lot of mix between folk or pop acts and an occasional jazz musician to help make it sound good.
Absolutely, dude.
I remember, like, Richie Haven's first album, he had a wonderful jazz pianist on that one. Tim Hardin used to start off with Warren Bernhardt on piano. He was also a jazz guy.
Unbelievable, dude. Mike Mainieri on vibes, yeah.
Yeah. I remember seeing Gordon Lightfoot that year with Felix Pappalardi playing bass. And Felix wasn't exactly a jazz musician, but he was a long-time musician. He
man.
knew his way around everything. He was a trumpet player and everything.
How would you describe Pappalardi? I mean, just he was a veteran musician, but he was almost a genreless musician. Was he more in the Jack Bruce mold? Could he play upright?
I'm not sure. He was playing electric bass when I saw him with Gordon Lightfoot. Um, and he was, like I said, he was a trumpet player.
Yeah, that's
He
striking,
played all
actually.
the stuff on the Cream record. I think White Room, stuff like that had trumpet.
I was going to say, because
He
like Judy Henske, who was a folk singer back in the day, her first gig at the Village Gate had Herbie Hancock on Wurlitzer and Keter Betts on upright bass. You know,
yeah.
I mean, it was just sort of it was just sort of genius. You know, I mean, I don't even know. There was. Do you remember, like, I mean, in 1967, uh, I, I mean, were you using the word rock and roll? I mean, the word funk was not in the lexicon of music. Someone would say, let's play a funky blues. But, like, rock was still, I mean, yeah, rock and roll came out, Elvis, Little Richard. That was more R&B, but I'm just wondering if you guys threw around terms, or was it really more of a Duke Ellington kind of manifesto for Labus?
I wasn't that heavily steeped in jazz really in those days. I didn't listen to much jazz when I was in high school, except things that were in Broadway shows. That's about as close to jazz as I got until I went to college. But and then I saw Dave Brubeck. That opened up a lot of doors for me. I mean, the thing that really got me playing jazz was living in New York. When I had started off with the Apple Pie Group, and we were a house band down in the bitter end of the Village, and I got a gig next door at a bar that was later to be called I forget what they called it, but in those days it was Louis Tavern.
Wow.
And,
wow.
I sat in front of a big window, so it kind of brought people in off the street.
Sure.
They had a lot of jazz musicians come in and sit in with me, like on a metal tray turned upside down for drum heads and brushes.
Oh my God, dude! Are you kidding me? This is what I.
Oh yeah.
I knew I knew we had magic. So who was? I mean, you're telling me like Roy Brooks? Like, who was coming in there to play?
Most of these guys, I didn't know their names. They were kind of, married to the bottle.
Dude, I dig, man. I dig.
Yeah, and it was actually from them that I learned to start using pop tunes and improvise on them. And so, I was really starting jazz from a very outside place. I remember I used to play in the early days, Both Sides Now, by Joni Mitchell.
Oh my God!
And I used to play it in 5/4.
Dude, Labus, I need video. I need tapes of this stuff, dude. Hold on for a second. I want you to talk about this for younger cats. Like, when did you're telling me some of the guys who might have been nursing the bottle, you're not sure of their names. Up to that point, you would play a standard or a pop tune and play it straight through. And then all of a sudden they were coming in, and then you were leaving the head of the tune and beginning to just improvise off the standards.
Yeah, well, I got the notion that you had to do that, but yes, and rather than using the hip tunes of the 30s, which and the 40s, which was where bebop came from, I got rhythm and all that. I was just using the tunes from my generation, which was I can't really throw out a lot of titles, but the tunes that we were all had in our heads.
Well, let's be clear. Like, I mean, you weren't doing the American Songbook. It was more like rock or folk rock, like Joni Mitchell, you said, or
yes, Neil Diamond. Some of those early things, and playing them with going over them and improvising. And of course, when you're playing alone in a bar, or even with a bass or a couple of people accompanying, you can kind of go where you want to go. So that's really fertile ground for experimenting.
It's
So it was
fantastic.
good for me in those days. I kind of picked up jazz along the way,
Well, I
and
think that that's
I
really
never
instructive.
really.
I mean, I think it's instructive for you to talk about your jazz education came on the bandstand. I mean, you did not have any academic, no academic training as it related to jazz.
No, that's correct. That's correct. But then I started going to hear Charles Mingus at the Village Vanguard. Every Monday night he did like a workshop, and he let people sit in. I didn't get to sit in with him, but it was very instructive hearing him. He was one of the big geniuses in New York City in those days.
Putting it this like, what
Uh,
was he doing at that time? I mean, because that is a essentially that time was a what people consider post bop. But what was he doing that was
but
inspiring to you? Because he had his, it was kind of a big band, maybe. What was he doing?
yeah, yeah. Well, it wasn't a 40-piece band or something, but it was. He'd have like 10, 12 guys on stage, and every now and then he'd stop the music and instruct somebody on how to be more appropriate. It was like an
See, I dig
ongoing
that. I
workshop.
dig, man. I dig. And
It's
so
the kind
you,
of thing
yeah.
that Ray Charles would do every now and then in the middle of a performance. I once saw him do this. He stopped the band because he didn't like the way the drummer was playing. This was like a 2,000 seater. He just
My.
stopped the show. And he started up again, but it's got to be right. Ray was doing it too long to have it twisted around. And the same thing with Mingus. Mingus was very well established. It was a way for him to have a gig and have musicians with him all the time. Uh, Billy Higgins was there. Some of the really big players. Um, it was great for him. I know that.
Well,
He
let
didn't
me
have
ask
to
you a
travel.
question. I mean, the Apple Pie Brotherhood. Where was your
Motherhood.
place to play?
Well, we were at the bitter end for our first summer, the summer of '67, and then we got a rehearsal studio because we were preparing our first album, and then we went out on the road and we went out as far as Chicago and down to Florida. In Florida, we we were misplaced in a bar with a go-go dancer. It wasn't quite right.
Not an uncommon gig for certain cats, but that not for your band.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But we came in playing psychedelic rock. The
It'd be
owner
hard
seemed
for
like
them
they
to
had a heart
dance to
attack.
that, man. I dig.
Exactly. Well, it was danceable, but it wasn't what they expected. They wanted like early Motown and all that stuff.
Oh, of course. Yeah. No, I mean, so you would go? Were you going to see the Thad Jones Mel Lewis big band at all?
I never did see them, but they were great.
Yeah.
I heard them. Yeah.
You know, Jeffrey,
Yeah.
I actually wanted to ask you if you could just paint the picture. I mean, I've talked to Mario Cipollina, who was the younger brother of
Yeah.
John, and
Nice.
he was like 13 or 12 in 1967, and he said that was the real summer of love. After that, uh, San Francisco was invaded by a whole bunch of people that from out of town, and it kind of. But what was that summer? What was that year like, as best you can, in terms of and drugs aside, just sort of like the ability to did you feel at that time as musicians that you truly could impact and maybe change the world?
Well, it certainly seemed like a lot of changes were happening. The summer of love was an import from the West Coast, and I think people were trying to buy that line that if we acted and thought differently about each other, we could be a loving group as opposed to just everybody out for themselves. Yeah, I think and the music seemed to be the communication of it all. We were all in love with the Jefferson Airplane and a couple of other West Coast groups that seemed to be, really putting out that message. that seemed to be different about their music. It wasn't just listen to us. It was more like we have a message here.
That's right.
Uh,
I mean, that's really the crux of it, man. Like it just sort of crystallized for me the last few days. I mean, I'm just, a naive 43-year-old cat, but it's like, can you talk about how much, how important it was to have real life experience? Because I guess my point is this, like, your life experience is in the jazz, in the sort of, uh, in the jazz context, but also in the, like you said, Jefferson Airplane, where there was a message. Your life experience comes out in your playing. And if basically all you've been doing is playing within the four walls of the academy or playing in your room, I don't know what kind of life story you have. And I'm like, wow, maybe that's why I cannot tell who anybody is anymore. Why there's this homogenization of sound, because I just wonder if there were things that you can point to in your life that really came out in your music, a blues kind of a situation, or some really uplifting stuff. I know you had a cultured upbringing, but I just feel that like you guys really had to overcome a lot of stuff, and it came out in your music. And I just kind of wanted you to talk about, stuff that you can sort of in hindsight look back on and say, that did come out in my playing, whether live or in the studio.
Yeah, well, that time was a sort of a melting pot time in music because the young audience was enjoying so many different things. They were enjoying blues, and in on Bleecker Street in New York, there was at Thanksgiving every year, and particularly that year, there was a big blues festival. I still remember the guy's name. Howard Solomon was the owner of the Cafe A Go Go, and he used to book, a steady stream of people, from B.B. King to Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee, and I mean, an incredible group of people. Junior Wells, Buddy Guy. The list is astounding of all the people, and Richie Havens would be part of that. And he would serve. He constantly was handing out turkey in the back room, and everybody was just hanging out. It was a beautiful.
That's the
scene.
greatest Thanksgiving ever, man. But I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
but it wasn't like people were siloed off into their families or their house. It was a communal gathering with music being the centerpiece, blues especially.
exactly right. There was much more of a communal feeling, almost anywhere you went in those days, especially in New York, down in the village. It was really kind of a reflection of what was happening on the West Coast. And then there was another club called the Electric Circus,
Absolutely.
that was one of the first ones that had a big parachute and everything, and a PA announcement. They put spotlights on people dancing on the floor. And some of the acts that went through there were just amazing. Muddy Waters, for example. Muddy Waters came in to play the Electric Circus. No piano. They didn't put a piano in the room. I had to bring an electronic piano when I played. And in those days, it was like a Hohner or something, pretty pretty elementary electric piano. And Buddy was friends with our lead singer, Ann Tansey, because she had toured with him. So they used my piano to play there.
Oh my!
So here, I'm like 20 years old, kind of green. I've been playing in bands for about 4 years, and not really on the scene in New York very long. And here's Otis Spann playing my piano. He's probably the greatest blues piano player of all time. Yeah.
Absolutely, he's rocking your. What kind of piano did you have?
It was a Hohner.
Oh, the Hohner.
He played my Hohner piano. I'd be embarrassed to have him play my Hohner piano today.
You didn't know any better. You were just like ecstatic that he was tickling those ivories, man. That's unbelievable.
Oh yeah, it was great.
Did you? That's the thing about the. There was a band called Chelsea Beige had a Stafford James in it. It was a great jazz player. Then also Dreams, the Brecker brothers, Billy Cobham. They played the Electric Circus, but they had a residency there. Like they would actually be the house band. That place, where was that place?
Just slightly east on 8th Street in the East Village.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you guys
It was
actually? I
very,
mean, did you have a? Did you ever? I mean, so Muddy came in and shared a bill with you guys, or did you actually have a residency there?
no,
Yeah.
no, we played there. We would do a night or two every couple of weeks. We were on a fairly good circuit with that place because we were local. They could get us really easy, and we love to do that because it was a lot of dancing, a lot of fun. But the people that went through there were kind of a cavalcade of stars. Sly and the Family Stone played there.
Maybe
That was.
Butterfield or something. Like maybe people like that.
I don't think Butterfield ever did. I first saw Butterfield at the Club 47.
Oh, you got to
Back when I
tell
was,
me. Wait, was it solo? What was he?
when
Who
I
was
was
he
still in
playing
high
with?
school.
Oh my God.
He had a full band. He had Elvin,
Oh, it was the original
and he,
band.
and
It
he
was
had
that original band.
yeah, and he had
Oh my.
Mike. He had Mike Bloomfield, and the whole thing. It was
Um,
it,
uh,
it was
yeah, that's fantastic. Uh, Jeff, we have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I don't expect you to know who this is, but just pay attention to the content, and we'll come back and break it down.
sure. Okay.
Well, I listened to. There were so many black musicians at that time that were paramount in my. I tried to listen to music. I tried to make it a daily thing to listen to music. I always found time to spend several hours a day listening to music to get ideas and just to keep up on things. And I found myself listening to the artist for various reasons. Like, of course, paramount was Coltrane, Miles. I listened to them for different things. And then I listened to people like Oscar Peterson more for playing with a good percussive time
Yeah, right.
feel, because he swung in a very different way than, for example, like a Red Garland, who plays all these beautiful flowery chords but had a completely different feeling of swing. I think what I feel so grateful for, Jake, is that when I listened to all these people, I was able to understand in my own way, conceptually, how each of them had an effect on my being. The intricacy of Bill Evans' voicings, the simplicity of, let's see if I can't think of all the artists at this time, but the people I listened to the most were definitely black musicians. And the interesting thing about it, even in the Air Force, before I actually began my musical journey in the Bay Area, I noticed this amazingly different thing that happened when Tony Williams and Ron Carter came into playing with Miles. They no longer just played straight ahead, ding, 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 dotted eighth note to the 16th note swing, but they broke the time up.
Mm-hmm.
And that just messed me up. I said, wow, this is so beautiful. They're breaking up the time. There's freedom. And then all of a sudden, as on My Funny Valentine, all of a sudden they start going into time, and it was amazing. It just lifted my entire being. So that whole concept of no longer just playing hard bop, but breaking up the time and everybody having a space to create, and then all of a sudden, as the choruses went by, everybody started to swing the tune. That was a huge, huge thing. And then, of course, after that whole thing became a whole new way of rhythm sections playing, I think it was the beginning of changing the way jazz was played. It was a whole other.
You know, I mean, I'm tempted to think that you guys, this cat and you, might have crossed paths. Very.
Is it Mark Knapflin?
Dude, that's it. He was in Butter's band. No, that's not Knapflin. That was the keyboardist Tommy Coster. Did you know Tommy?
Tommy Coster.
He was in Santana. He was playing like Buddy Montgomery's organo at a strip club, and the guy was he is the sickest keyboardist. And he and I really, you know, I mean, can you talk about like with Van, or I don't care who it is. I mean, did you as a part of the rhythm section, do you feel like, because he was talking about that one, there was this Plug Nickel sessions with Miles where Ron and Tony, they started to leave the head of the tune and break up time and form. I just kind of wanted to know like how you were able to incorporate that, even subtly, into music that wouldn't be considered quote unquote jazz music, just because I know you respected and loved the guys that he was talking about, like Train and Miles, Mingus, all these guys.
Wow. You know, when I started off with working with Van, he was coming off of a kind of lackluster acceptance of Astral Weeks.
Right.
And on Astral Weeks, he had, you know, pretty much all jazz musicians, really, really great guys. Richard Davis on
Absolutely,
bass.
yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah.
And when we started off recording the Moondance album, we started with those guys again. And we did one session, and it was, I mean, it was great fun, but it was obviously going to come out more of the same.
Right.
Warner Brothers didn't want to hear about that. So
hold on, I want to ask you a question before you go on. Like Astral Weeks is considered sort of an iconic album now, but you're saying it didn't really pan out at the time. It did not. It got a lukewarm.
Well, it didn't sell more than 50,000 copies, I think. And in those days, you needed several 100,000 to even think of it as a hit. And after Brown Eyed Girl and everything, they expected him to be a hit maker. So, Afterwards didn't do it. And the general talk about it was too jazzy.
There's nothing wrong with that, dude. Yeah, I did.
Well, yeah, but in the context, it was not what he wanted. And it's hard with his music not to play jazzy, actually, because it a lot of it lends itself to meditative kind of playing and stretching out.
It totally does. Wait, hold on. I just want to be clear though. Even with the lackluster sales, so to speak, he still was, because Van was so loving. He loved the jazz music so much. He still tried another session with those guys.
Yes, he did. Because he had a lot of confidence in them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the style changed because he consciously wrote tunes that were in a different place.
Right.
If you look at the songs that he chose for the Moondance album, all except for maybe the song Moondance itself, most of them are very pop songs. They have strict verse and chorus and that kind of thing. And when you put a bunch of jazz guys playing it, it doesn't sound right.
I will say that Moondance. I mean, I just interviewed Malabar a couple weeks ago, and that tune is. Oh God, I got his number if you want to connect with it. The guy is on fire still. I mean,
he's a great guy.
Dude, honestly, that album swings so hard in a radio-friendly context. He was obviously trying to get some major radio hits, obviously.
Yeah. that's it. And just wasn't getting them with those great guys. So for me, again, this was 1969, so I was really 22. I was still kind of green, but I got the idea that I was not supposed to, play a lot of riffs and add too much that wasn't there. So I focused on trying to work with the vocal, and so anything I would do as a dressing up the tune at all, I tried to keep it echoes of what he was doing vocally, and he responded very well to that. He could hear that he was being echoed, and he would up the ante on what he was doing.
Oh, dude, I miss Lavis, man. I've missed you so much, man. You're nailing it again, dude. So I mean, the point is that like if you were up there just with too much language, he probably would have kicked you to the curb. But you were just channeling. You were playing off of you were playing off the vocalist, which every iconic Bernard Purdie does the same thing. All these cats do, but that is an art in and of itself, because you got to put your ego on the back burner.
Yeah, well, your ego is to make the whole thing, come off well. I what I've been doing the last bunch of years is I play a lot of piano bars. I play a famous piano bar in Oakland right now called the Alley.
Oh my God!
It's a legendary place.
Wait, what days? What days do you play there?
Right now I play there Monday and Friday.
Dude, I will see you on unless you're. Hold on, Friday the 25th. Are you planning on playing February 25th?
Absolutely.
Dude, we are gonna raid. I'm there, dude. What time, man?
Oh, that's great. I start at 9. It goes till 1:30.
Dude, so talk about that. I mean, so explain how you really get to have your cake and eat it too at the Alley.
Yeah, well, I think that Van really helped me develop a sense of accompaniment. I actually had been playing with teenage female singers when I started off at about the age of 12, playing professional gigs. But they were, like sisterhood luncheons, and there was this one girl used to take me to her voice lessons every now and then to play for the voice lessons. And that's how I started getting trained by very good teachers to be, subordinate in a way, but also supportive in what I played, And with Van, it blossomed for me because he had that jazz element in his voice or in his being. You didn't know exactly what he was going to do ever. And I think he maintained a whole career like this. I think he still is very explosive. And, there are moments when everyone knows what's going to happen, but he's at his best when he gets beyond that and is willing to jump out. And that's what we're always trying for in concerts, And in recording, he's looking for that inspiration that will pop him out.
Oh my! Well, I mean, did you have a chance to record with Rick Slosser with Van?
I did work with Rick. Oh, way back there.
Because Rick told this insane story about getting out to the West Coast in he was part of this band with Barbara Moritz called Lamb, and then Tom Salisbury's like, excuse me, he's like, yo, by the way, he's like, Van's looking for a drummer, and in those days you could literally from a payphone, you have Van's home number, call him up, he answered the phone. I think he was out in Mill Valley, and he showed up. Rick did for audition or tryout, whatever, and Ronnie Montrose was there, and I forget who the bass player was, but he said the first 2 days, Van was almost catatonic on a couch, laying down, did not say a word, barely said a word. I mean, these guys were on the clock. The idea was that they were going to come up with some kind of new tunes, and for 2 days straight, Rick was like, "What is going on here?" And he went out to lunch on the second day or the third day, I can't remember, and he was telling the guys, he's like, guys, I can't take this anymore. He's like, if this keeps going on, I'm out, you know. And I don't know, the third day maybe, Van finally gets up and turns to the guys. He's like, you know nothing but a hound dog. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. And they're like, yeah. And he just gets off the couch and starts just going nuts, screaming, singing the song. And within 2 weeks, he had written, I think it was Hard Nose to the Highway. But it's like
no, I think it was. I think it's another. It's another album that he was working on in those days with them.
I think you're right. I think you're right. But the point is that he was explosive in his creativity. Yeah. You didn't know when it was going to come, but when it did, it could flow like a waterfall.
Oh, absolutely. Well, he's talked with me about this a number of times in the past. It's it is a flow, an energy flow that comes through him. It's like a channeling.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know when it's going to come. And he's always depressed when it's not there. And he's always exhausted when it is there, because he can't get it down fast enough. But basically, you know, he would do most of his writing way back with, you know, a cassette machine and a guitar. And he would just go. He'd turn the machine on and start going. And then he'd have to go back and write the words down and take them down off of the tape. It all came to him from somewhere else, basically. I mean, it's very hard to negotiate what this thing really is, but, you know, it was him, but he was hearing voices from, you know, another place. That's
I loved it. No, it was a stream of consciousness, and
exactly.
When it came, it was coming through him from a different universe or from the heavens. But I mean, in terms of your playing, how did you? I mean, clearly you were you part? Excuse me. Was there a union in Boston that you were part of at 12 years old, or were you a non-union player?
No, I joined the union when I started off with Apple Pie at 47 in New York, and that was in '67.
Can you talk a little bit about, like, just especially for people listening to this, younger musicians, like you also in some ways, even though you're not, you know, I don't know if you've ever played in like in a kind of a free music context or in that sense, but you also have the ability, like most cats, when they get out of their own way, to be a conduit or a channel for the music to come through them. And then it's kind of one of those things where, like, Labus gets off the bandstand, Jake Feinberg walks up to him like, man, how did you do that? And you said, I have no idea. You know, it's sort of the Socratic method of you have to know what you don't know. Can you talk about how you've cultivated that over time? For some people, I think that wonderment can be maddening, but actually that's the magic of music.
Well, you know, with Apple Pie, which was, you know, that was the first band that I worked with that was really exploring. I worked with a band in college that was more, you know, just doing the songs that we liked. But with Apple Pie, we got into you know, stretching out sessions. On our first album, there's a long jam session called I think it was Contact was the name of it or something.
Really?
And you know, it's like a 20-minute session or something like that. And part of it was the personality of the guys. We had a fantastic guitarist, Ted Demos, who was really influenced by Bloomfield and those other people, great blues players, but who could stretch out and play. You know, that's what the psychedelic aspect of it
Absolutely. Was. He wasn't a jazzer, but he could stretch out. I love that.
Yes. And the thing when I started in with Van, I had just come off of a blues band too, which had a lot of jazz trained guys from the Berkeley School, the horn players especially.
Who's in that band? Who was in that band?
Well, it was run by two guys called Dave Winfield, wow. Mike Winfield, and Billy Caldwell, who unfortunately did not have a happy ending.
Oh no!
So he was a great guitar player, and he he had trouble with the fact that he didn't get the recognition he wanted. But the horn players were Colin Tilton and Jack Schroer. Both came from Berkeley, and they were good friends with Ernie Watts.
Dude, my dearest friend, I've interviewed him I love Ernie, so I cannot believe you just dropped his name, dude.
Oh, he was a big influence on me. I mean, his playing was so melodic, but yet out there.
Oh my God, dude, he was. I mean, I don't know what happened I've had some deep hangs with that guy. I'm just saying, I cannot imagine what he was about in '67. What year was this essentially? 60.
This was '69.
Oh my God, dude. I mean, what a monster, dude. What a monster.
Yeah, great sound and everything. But these guys they came laden with what you did in jazz. they knew all that stuff, and I brought them into work with Van. Van had reached this point where he realized that the jazz thing had got to go.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do. I'm love, dude. This is it. If he was gonna if he was gonna make money if he was gonna, he could have been a starving genius and stuck with the jazzers, or refined it.
No, he had to produce.
Okay.
He had to have a hit.